Did you notice that this show doesn't have any commercials? I'm not selling you diapers or vitamins or smoothies or gasoline. That's because I don't want corporate sponsors telling us what to investigate and what to say. Instead, you're our sponsors. This is a production by our nonprofit, the Informed Consent Action Network. If you want more investigations, more hard-hitting news, if you want the truth, go to ICanDecide.org and donate now. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Wherever you are out there in the world, it's time to step out onto the Highwire. Well, as you can tell, we have a little bit of a different set today. In fact, we are very stripped down in our approach to the Highwire. This is due to the fact that we are broadcasting from Texas, where we are still under what has now been a week-long winter storm, ice storm. There it is, millions in Texas without power as deadly storm brings snow, freezing weather. And reports are that 4.4 million people lost their power in Texas. There's currently 3 million people still without power as we're speaking. 12 million people in Texas are facing problems with their water. There's 7 million people right now that are under a boil your water advisory because of, issues with the water treatment plants. And over 250,000 people are without all water, completely. And in case you didn't see it in the headlines where you're at, this is what Texas looked like in the news.
Dangerous weather system wreaking havoc.
The worst Texas winter storm in years.
All of the largest cities in Texas have been hammered by snow and ice.
The National Weather Service has issued a hard freeze warning.
The concern right now are these rolling outages.
Millions of Texans are in their homes without power.
More than 4 million people have already lost electricity across the South, mostly in Texas, where an ice storm and bitter cold have forced rolling blackouts.
The state's energy authority instituted rolling blackouts across its 254 counties to prevent a complete collapse of the energy grid.
They're saying every 30, 45 minutes, you may get your power back on, they'll shut you back off.
San Antonio Airport, Austin Airport closed down today. Houston airports closed down.
Snow and freezing temperatures have forced many to seek out local shelters. City officials are warning residents that many shelters are reaching capacity.
This is tragic. We hadn't had power since 5 a.m. yesterday.
You'll see a blanket here and blue Scotch tape. We're doing anything possible to keep the heat in.
The snow and icy roads have caused more than 130 traffic accidents. In El Paso, this car pileup left tractor trailers overturned.
Take a look at these pumps right here. There's bags on every single one. This gas station, totally out of gas.
That also creates a problem for first responders and their trucks.
Long lines wrapping around grocery stores in Austin as people try to get anything they need before another round of freezing rain.
When we went into the store, they barely had anything. There was barely any food there.
The freezing temperatures are also causing pipes to burst. As you can see from these social media videos, that means flooding on top of everything else.
The blackouts that are in Texas are being made worse by the failure of wind turbines, many freezing in the icy weather, cutting output in half. And it's raising questions about the Lone Star State's increasing reliance on renewable energy.
A lot of people asking, why was the state that's known to produce energy so unprepared for this crisis?
My staff, most of which have no power, there's no internet through most of Austin, Texas. We've decided to keep most of them off of the icy roads, which are treacherous. And so right now, we're just trimmed down. I've got Patrick and Cole and I are the only ones that decided to try and make it in here to get a broadcast out. In some ways, I suppose this is practice for whatever happens in the future in a world where censorship is reigning supreme, where all sorts of controls are happening in the United States of America and around the world. There's a lot of questions that a moment like this brings to mind. I grew up in Colorado, so I want to say that, I imagine if I was watching this from Colorado, I'd be sort of snickering to myself and saying, oh, those Texans, they really, they blow things out of proportion. But what's happening here in Texas, as far as anyone I've talked to, they've never really seen anything like this for decades at the very least. And I want to say that when you're here, growing up in Colorado, we would lose power in the middle of winter. It wasn't a big deal. Most of us had wood-burning stoves, things like that. But here in Texas, nothing is designed to handle this, including my own house. I have to say that since our show ended last Thursday, snow started coming down. I spent the first several days trying to bring in heaters to keep my well pumps running, to keep my pipes going. I built covers that weren't there. As I was, water would stop coming to the house. I'd get out, I'd get it thawed. And then about 4 nights ago, the temperature dropped down to 2 degrees. Our house, my house, has had power most of the time, but on the rolling blackouts in the middle of the night in that very cold weather, shutting off our power did the job and everything froze. And so for the last 3 days, I've been trying to figure out what's frozen, how I could get running water. And then yesterday morning, I found the culprit. I had melted my wells. I had heaters blowing in my attic where all of my pipes were running. I could tell some of those were frozen. And finally, I was melting a little pipe outside my house. I found the one that comes into the house. And as that thawed, I could hear the water kick in the house. And then moments later, my wife, Lee, yelling, "It's coming through the ceilings." And sure enough, in multiple rooms, in my garage, over our bedroom, in our master bathroom, water pouring down through the ceilings. And so just to be perfectly clear, where normally we would be developing this show for the last several days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, all in development, every one of my staff, we never got to meet. We barely got a phone call in because I'm not the only one trying to, keep my home livable and safe for my family and my children. And we even brought in a few of our staff that were in apartments or condominiums that were totally frozen, had no power. These are the roads. I mean, it started out with raining that turned to sleet and ice. This is what the road, imagine what the roads look like if this is what your porch looks like. That's actually a great road. The icy ones are the dangerous ones. But you get a sense it's really been extremely cold. And so once I started trying to fix, all day yesterday, I was trying to fix pipes. I had over 10 water breaks throughout my house. I thought I had it. I had that moment where I was going to do the Tom Hanks, "I have made water." I finally got it, where I had the showers running. We were all getting excited to take a shower. And then as I went into the master bathroom, there was 2 inches of water, and I realized there's still some hidden pipe somewhere that is going to push me over the edge. I gave up on that about 11 o'clock last night. But if you have any questions about why I'm, wearing this right now in the studio, it's a balmy, maybe 40 degrees. I've got a heater right here under my knees. So we're going to keep this simple. But I do want to talk about when, going through this, there's a lot that I grew up in a family that always prepared for the worst. So I had the heaters, I have the water, and I have the food, but I didn't realize it would get this cold here. I didn't realize we could lose water or that you could lose power. I have a generator, but so many don't. And I think about, how many people, what will be the death toll down here in Texas, all the elderly that can't get out of their apartments or condominiums, that have no power, maybe freezing right now, those that are handicapped. I mean, I can't even, my prayers and our prayers are with all of those people that I know are in much worse condition than we are at my house. And we've made sure that everyone on our staff is being well taken care of. But I'll tell you, as I've been working on pipes and thinking about how odd this entire experience is, and the occasional text will show up that this is an attack on Texas. I'll tell you, it's felt like an attack on my home from Mother Nature. But the idea that we could control weather, is this an attack on the South in the United States of America here, where maybe we aren't wearing our masks, we're not complying, or, is our energy grid under attack? And talking of HARP, and I've got my notes here instead of on a screen in front of me, but High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. This is something that's being discussed. Would it be possible to inflict a winter storm on states that have never, are almost never seen snow. I'm not going to get into conspiracy theories, but these are the things that run through your mind because, I mean, what really isn't on the table anymore? When we've got Elon Musk telling us that within the next, like in this year, his Neuralink, which is a microchip in your brain that can connect you to the internet, will go into human trials. Well, if we can microchip ourselves and basically get as quickly as we can towards Terminator, I guess anything seems possible. And then I think about Bill Gates and the amount of articles we're reading where, working on technologies to block the sun. What if that went wrong? What if the farming states that we count on for our food suddenly could not get enough sun or stayed too cold? What if we brought that dark winter that Joe Biden talked about as he was running for president? What if we brought that upon ourselves? Is science getting out of control? These are things that I know are starting to worry all of us. And they're things that, as I've said before, now that social media has decided to censor everybody, and you're here, you found us on this website, these are things that I want to explore. But I want you to know we're not going to just, guess at these thoughts. I want to know if there's a scientist out there that understands HAARP and can speak to it. Please contact us either at info@icandecide.org, or if you're a whistleblower that has an inside scoop on any of the things that we're discussing, remember you can always go to whistleblower@icandecide.org. Anyway, it's a crazy time here in Texas. It's been, it really makes you recognize what it would take to be prepared. I'm not sure that we could make it for over a month, even though I thought I was ready. Certainly not if it stayed cold. Luckily, I think there's warm weather around the corner. But I think we should all be checking in. As I ran to the grocery store, it opened up for a day when the streets cleared up. And I would say for the fourth time in the last year, there were empty shelves. And I just thought to myself, I spent the first 50 years of my life in the United States of America, and I never saw an empty shelf. And now in the last year, 4 times, I felt like I was seeing or standing in a store in the Soviet Union. Are we moving forward? Are we progressing? Is this all accidental? Is it natural? Are there people behind this? Is there, we've talked about the Great Reset. All of those things are what are running through my mind, but we don't today really have the technologies to do the research and bring that all to this show, so we're going to keep it really simple. But no Highwire can go forward without our own Jeffrey Jackson. So it's time for the Jackson Report. All right, Jeffrey. Well, things are crazy here in Texas. I hope it's a little less chaotic. I mean, you live in an area that is used to having ice storms, and there's talks about our power grid that a lot of it was too many solar panels and wind turbines that froze. I think we're going to have questions. I'm an environmentalist, but I'm going to have questions going forward whether we can have completely, natural energy if we can't handle the weather around us. Maybe a coal mine here or there or some oil burning might be in order. All questions, right? I mean, there's just, we've been talking on the phone. There's a lot on my mind. But the reason we really want to get this show up is there's still a lot of important things happening in the news that are going to affect our lives, whether we're in an ice storm or not. So what do we got this week?
Yeah, well, I will say about New England here, we are used to this weather. Even though it is changing here as well, we're getting some harder winters and also some bigger wind gusts out of nowhere. But I will say about Texas, you don't have the road crews like we do in these states that expect this weather. So you don't have the salt on the road that they normally have, and the houses typically aren't as prepared for that type of weather, the sustained weather like this. So we can act like we're going to go right into the headlines here, but I want to say my thoughts and prayers go out to you, your family, the team, and everyone suffering in Texas. And we'll hope this hopefully you'll have 70 in the coming week, and we can all look back on this and laugh.
Yes, absolutely.
So in the headlines, in the headlines this week, there's some narratives coming on, and we've covered this in the past, kind of like with Bell's palsy, with severe allergic reactions to the vaccines. First, you see 1 or 2 headlines kind of drip out there, and then all of a sudden you see 3 or 4 more, and 5 and 6 more, and then it becomes, well, we're going to change the CDC recommendations for allergic reactions. Now we're seeing this with people testing positive after vaccination. So we have tons of headlines here. I just grabbed a couple for time's sake, but this is one out of OC. OC man tests positive for COVID-19 weeks after getting second vaccine dose. This was 3 weeks after he received his second dose of the Pfizer shot. And then over to Oregon, we have 4 in Oregon test positive for virus after vaccinations. Now, it's important into this article. It says 4 people in Oregon who have been fully vaccinated with the COVID-19 vaccine have tested positive for the coronavirus, the health authority reported Friday. Oregon is among the first states nationwide to report, this is it, breakthrough cases. That's the buzzword now. People who test positive for coronavirus at least 14 days after receiving their second dose of the COVID-19. So accompanying this talk of what's called breakthrough cases is parallel reporting of what a lot of people knew who looked at the emergency use authorization studies. You can still spread this, you can still spread and develop COVID-19 after the vaccine. And that is exactly what the headlines are saying. And this one says you can still spread it and develop it after getting the vaccines. What to know? It says experts say people can still spread and even develop COVID-19 after vaccine. Experts advise people who get vaccinated continue wearing a mask or 2 masks here in the US, washing their hands and maintaining proper social distancing. And this is the best line yet. Some experts suggest you should continue to act as if you never got the vaccine. Okay.
So just take on all the risks. There are no benefits. You know, I want to hit this again because I still get asked, I still see it in the news. People just don't seem to understand that when they say it's 95% effective, that is only against, you know, having mild symptoms. It's going to, is 95% effective supposedly, and we've challenged even that at stopping your sniffles and your cough. It does not, you know, at least the endpoints of the trials, and this is where we're at, right, Jeffrey? And we've been watching this. The endpoint of the trial never set out to show that it could stop the infection known as SARS-CoV-2 or the transmission. And I keep trying to make this point every time I'm being interviewed by the New York Times or the Washington Post. It's really frustrating. And they did it on purpose. To me, you know, when we get accused of misinformation, right, Jeffrey? But this truly is what misinformation is. When you sell the people, when you use languaging you know they don't understand. Tony Fauci has done this. They are lying to the public. And here's the lie. Up until this point, every human being on earth believes that when we say vaccination, what it means is a product that stops your infection and keeps you from being able to infect other people. Anything else that just makes you feel better is called a treatment. And so they have really changed. They did a bait and switch to the world where they have changed how they're describing what a vaccine is. This really, truly, if it doesn't stop the infection and if it doesn't stop the transmission, then it can't get to herd immunity, which is this is what's driving me nuts, Jeffrey. And this is where I wish we were on a mainstream media channel. I wish I could go in to the briefing rooms inside of the White House, because there's one simple question, Dr. Anthony Fauci, since you have said we still have to wear our masks, since you're saying that you're not sure and the WHO has agreed to this, and now we're seeing people getting sick and get testing positive after the second vaccination, and can you explain why you are saying that we still need a lot of people to vaccinate in order to get to herd immunity? How is, and here's the simple question, Dr. Fauci, how do you achieve herd immunity with a product that does not stop infection or transmission? I really want to know that, and stay on him. Don't let him word salad around this, because the truth is every major newspaper and any scientist or doctor that says we need to get on top of this virus by getting people vaccinated, that is a blatant lie, especially based on these headlines you're sharing with us now. And I want to point out that they may talk about reinfection of those people that had the natural virus. As far as we can tell, that's about 6 total cases in the entire world that were cherry-picked. And we even question, you know, whether or not they had really had the virus or whether that PCR test was accurate the second time. These people really are, and you can tell, right? We know that if this was successfully stopping infection, they would be celebrating on every news station they could. I think they're really losing faith in this product in a big, big way.
I would agree. In the herd immunity through vaccination crowd, not only in the test for the emergency use authorization for Pfizer, Moderna, they don't know, they had no data. They didn't test for the vaccine effectiveness against transmission of SARS-CoV-2, as you said. They didn't test it for effectiveness in people previously infected with SARS-CoV-2. But more importantly, for this next segment and for the herd immunity people, they didn't test it in changes in the virus. So we have this other big, gigantic, blazing sun coming in that needs to be questioned. And this is what's happening. Just this week, we have a report of 7 new variants coming out. This was on top of the ones that were already here from December. Researchers identify 7 new US-based coronavirus variants. Now, what's interesting here is there's a lot of words going around, and I thought I'd just, from my understanding, there's a strain, there's a variant, and there's a mutation. So the strain is SARS-CoV-2. So that's the big umbrella SARS-CoV-2. So that's something that we've been dealing with the whole time for this thing. The mutations are something that are happening in small processes all the time through viruses, through pathogens, very normal. Most of them are not even seen, not even an issue. But when a variant is a version of the virus that's accumulated enough mutations to kind of branch off into a separate branch and become something that's possibly more transmissible or, hopefully not. And that's the way medicine defines those things. And I see a lot of reporting that is interchanging those words. It becomes very confusing. So the issue really here, though, is the point I'm saying with this is there's evidence that the vaccines are resisting these new strains, and this was a South African variant is the one that's really been giving these vaccines a problem, according to the reporting. So one of the trials, it says new clinical trials raises fears the coronavirus is learning how to resist vaccines. And this is most of the vaccines. This talks about the South African variant, but this is just one of the new variants. So we go back to 2018 because sometimes, going back a couple of years before this misinformation censorship came in, you can see some real truthful reporting. And this was one from 2018. Vaccines are pushing pathogens to evolve. This really says it straight out. It says in this, there's a couple just amazing quotes. Recent research suggests, however, that some pathogen populations are adapting in ways that help them survive in a vaccinated world, and that these changes come about in a variety of ways. Immunization is also making once rare or non-existent genetic variants of pathogens more prevalent, presumably because vaccine-primed antibodies can't as easily recognize and attack shapeshifters that look different from vaccine strains. It's a fascinating article. I would suggest everyone go check that out. It really goes into the study that they did. They took something that was called Marek's disease. This is a highly contagious disease that runs through chicken populations and just decimates herds, kills them eventually. And what they did was they took 100 chickens, vaccinated them, 100 unvaccinated them, and unvaccinated chickens, followed them, and found that the vaccinated chickens were shedding more lethal doses of this Marek's disease strain. The unvaccinated were less lethal, less contagious doses. And why is this a problem? Because there's been 3 tries at this vaccine so far to combat this disease. One in 1970, one in 1983, and the current one. And the reason they did this research is they're afraid this current vaccine, once that shifts, they don't have a backup for a 4th. So it's kind of really paralleling what we're seeing here. And that, again, that was 2018. But now we're having headlines that mirror that in 2021 as we sit here. COVID-19 vaccines could add fuel to the evolution of coronavirus mutations. This is the new headlines we're seeing right now. What's going on here is somewhat similar to a larger and more concerning problem in medicine. Many bacteria have gradually evolved the ability to survive even when walloped by a large dose of antibiotics. That problem has created new strains of deadly drug-resistant germs. And then they quote a gentleman named Paul Benaschi, a Howard Hughes investigator at the Rockefeller University, is particularly concerned this could happen between the time of an initial vaccination and a second shot to maximize the immune response. He says they might serve as a short a sort of breeding ground for the virus to acquire new mutations, he says. There are really too many unknowns to really be definitive and positive about what the best way forward is, what the most effective way to use the available vaccine dose, Benashi says. So sure
It's really
enough, we have
interesting,
enough.
Jeffrey, because it's something that it's sort of a different, look at something that we've been talking about. We talked about, and for people that are brand new to the Highwire, and all of this will be available in the newsletter. If you sign our newsletter, go to thehighwire.com. Everything Jeffrey's talking about, every article that we're talking about here, you will receive on Monday if you're on our news list. If you're not getting our newsletter, by the way, and you're watching this show, then you're missing like 80% of what we're providing. I don't want you to just go out there and say, hey, you know what I heard Del Bigtree or Jeffrey Jackson said? It's actually, these are peer-reviewed science by Oxford, by Harvard, by USC. Don't miss out on your opportunity to be able to say to your friends, this is proven science. This is legit. This isn't just some network I listen to. So please take the opportunity. And right now, go to, if you're on the highwire.com watching this, just sign our newsletter so that you can get the most powerful part of our research. We could just make it up and shoot from the hip, but we don't. We're going to hand you all this material, so make sure that you get it. But the point I wanted to bring up is we've been talking about our issue when looking at these vaccine trials, the COVID-19 vaccine trials, is that we saw such little production after that first shot of the neutralizing antibodies. We've been saying we think there's a real problem between the first and the second shot, that may be where you're most vulnerable to antibody-dependent enhancement, which led to the death of most of the animals in the animal trials for the last 20 years trying to develop this coronavirus vaccine. And now we're seeing a different problem, that maybe that underperformance after that first shot could allow this moment where these strains really start mutating like crazy. And again, it's sort of like what I opened the show with. We've got, in a way, we have really, got a God complex in our institutions. And these scientists, we trust them, but most people don't recognize we may be altering the world that we live in. And I think about, this vaccine right now for COVID-19, for those people that it's deadly for, that tiny percentage, it's about 0.4% death rate in the United States of America. When I think about that, if we have a vaccine that does not kill the virus inside of you, does not create immunity so you can never catch it again, but you can actually spread it, we're actually keeping COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2, to be more specifically, we're keeping it alive by using a vaccine that only takes away our symptoms, but allows it to live inside of us and breed and spread. Whereas someone that catches it naturally, their immune system kills it dead, it's over, and they can't share it. And so more and more, I want people to start recognizing you cannot beat natural immunity, and this inferior immunity that can't even kill off the infection or stop transmission really could lead to a far more dangerous world. Bill Gates and the WHO and Tony Fauci, if they don't watch what they're doing, they could really create a terrifying world where we either are wearing helmets all the time, or maybe we just eradicate the species altogether. This is really fascinating science. I know it may sound morbid to those of you that are watching right now, but if you're into this stuff, and we do geek out here at the Highwire, it is super fascinating. You know what they always say, don't mess with Mother Nature.
It's a vital conversation, Del, and it needs to happen now because there are talks about the delay to the second vaccine. And Benashi is apparently not in these talks because he's saying that is potentially a window where this thing could evolve into something, more contagious or more deadly. So we're seeing people say it's okay. Experts are saying this looks like it might become policy in the U.S. I see a lot of drum beats for that. As far as the headlines are concerned. So just an amazing conversation that needs to happen now, but we already might have a solution. It comes from the opinion of an unqualified rebranded software engineer. Some may know him as Bill Gates. and he says the third shot may be needed to fight new variants. Bill Gates warns. And in there, he says it's reasonably likely that he calls it, we'll have a tuned vaccine to fight these current variants. Nothing to talk about the future variants or whatever's coming for this after that booster doesn't work. But that's an interesting thing that that's an interesting data point there, just to show that what the answer is for someone that continually pushes vaccines or promotes vaccines. But as these vaccines were coming out, we were promised a safety net as they were being trialed, and we saw these things coming into markets and coming into people's arms at that point, and then vaccinating millions. We were promised a safety net, and we were promised answers and ways to petition if we get hurt. And now the headlines are showing what appears to be the truth. And this is right out of New York Times. This is the FDA. As millions get shots, FDA struggles to get safety monitoring system running, not even optimized, running. So it says in here, the much touted system the government designed to monitor any dangerous reactions won't be capable of analyzing safety data for weeks or months, according to numerous federal health officials. For now, federal regulators are counting on a patchwork of existing programs that they acknowledge are inadequate because of small sample size, missing critical data, or other problems. It gets better. In interviews, FDA officials acknowledge that a promise monitoring system known as BEST is still in its developmental stages. They expect it to start analyzing vaccine safety data sometime soon, but likely not until after the Biden administration reaches its goal of vaccinating 100 million people. And that, of course, is the biologics effectiveness and safety system.
This vaccine, Jeffrey, has the potential to be deadly. We know that it does. It killed animals in the animal trials, whether it's antibody-dependent enhancement, whether it's some mutation issue, whether it's anaphylaxis, or if it's infertility issues, all of which are I want to put this correctly, are plausible theories. These are plausible theories. After 100 million people have the vaccine, it's a little late. It's a day late and $1 short if we find out that those people are at risk of dying when they come in contact with next year's coronavirus. I can't even stress how infuriating it is to see that. I suppose I should feel good because we've been warning people about this forever. But let's be perfectly clear. Can we be perfectly clear? Because for 5 years I've been investigating this. I didn't want to destroy my, Emmy award-winning television career while I was working for CBS because I was, wanted to go out and scare people about nothing. What I got involved with was an investigation that started with an MMR study and a whistleblower in the CDC that showed me exactly what New York Times is finally reporting. There are no surveillance systems for the injuries from vaccines. And so for all of you idiots out there that keep putting down the parents that say their child, developed autism or their child developed paralysis or died after a vaccine, and you listen to the Sanjay Guptas and the, Swaminathans at the WHO say, oh, we have a robust surveillance system and any issue, Paul off, and any issue that would come up from vaccinations, we catch it right away and we make adjustments. They just admitted to you right now. And they're saying, well, because of COVID-19 vaccine didn't change anything, folks. All it did is make all of you recognize that there's too many headlines of people dying and getting sick from this vaccine, that they have no way, just as we pointed out at the very beginning of this year, the WHO lied when they said we have robust surveillance systems. There are no surveillance systems. So there's no way to know whether your child's autism was or was not caused by the vaccine, except for your own, eyewitness account and your experience of that event, or the, rise in diabetes after vaccination, or the rise in ADD, ADHD, and lupus, and all of these things that we keep talking about. Yet every scientist that goes out on their own to explore the complaints of these parents that are in the millions around the world, they're immediately labeled anti-vaxxers. They find themselves under threat and the funding being pulled from them and their university until they're kicked out of their job of investigating this for us. Folks, we are in serious trouble here. There is no surveillance. They just admitted that. New York Times finally admits it. Meanwhile, on the very next page of the New York Times, we'll be telling you how great this vaccine is and go out and get it. But we don't know what's going to happen to you. And we'll never know because nobody cared enough to build a surveillance system in the modern world. And remember, VAERS, the system we keep talking about, they say Dell's spreading misinformation. Harvard Medical School says it's capturing less than 1% of the total amount of injuries that are happening from vaccines. Less than 1%. When we looked at 2018, there was over 500 deaths from vaccines. There was, 60,000 reported injuries. If that's only 1%, then that means there's 6 million injuries that should have been reported. And 500 deaths turns into 50,000 deaths. Do you see how this goes, folks? And we're already hit 500 deaths from the COVID-19 at VAERS. If that's 1%, how many people are being murdered by this vaccine right now? And we'll only know after 100 million have received it. I'm sorry, Jeffrey. I mean, everyone, I've told Jeffrey we're going to move quickly through this, but it's just enough to make you lose it. It's so scary. It's so sad. It's so unnecessary in a modern world that we have to read things like this. We shouldn't have waited. It's not like, oh, we had to finally ramp up the surveillance system because we got a new vaccine. This was supposed to have been in place with the 1986 Act.
Right. These are historically important points to point out, not only real time, but also to put a stake in the ground and say, look, we warned, we told you so. Read this and give it to your family. The American people, I mean, let's just, again, simply say, this is an experimental vaccine. And because it's experimental, there are a lot of unanswered questions, safety included. So this post-marketing surveillance is essential because everyone taking the shot is part of the experiment now. Yeah. That's a known. So as the American people were walking into this experiment, they were promised, we gotcha. We have safety monitoring, no problem. We're going to keep an eye out. We're going to tell you if things go wrong, we'll adjust accordingly. And on the back end, if anybody gets injured, we got you there too. There's a problem with that. Critics are questioning it. This is the next headline, and I put these two together because it's so important. Critics question vaccine injury compensation program readiness as COVID-19 claims come in. It says, in the past decade, the CICP's Countermeasures Injury Compensation Program has paid more than $6 million to a total of 29 people who filed successful claims. Almost all were related to the H1N1 vaccine. But a whopping 92% of all of the claims filed got rejected.
Jeez.
Most of our claims were strong, said Christina Campanello, a vaccine injury attorney who filed 4 cases in the CICP on behalf of clients with reactions to H1N1 vaccine. All 4 claims were rejected. Now, this countermeasure program is a much less known, a much smaller program than the vaccine injury compensation program, but people really need to get up to speed on this because this is what you're going to be interacting with if you or a loved one is hurt or dies. And one of the best articles I've seen out there is this one here. It says, so what happens if you get injured by a COVID-19 vaccine? This talks all about this countermeasures program. In it says it's extremely difficult for a petitioner to prevail in the CICP. Only 8% of all petitioners since 2010 have been awarded compensation through the CICP. It has been said that the CICP is a program where you have the right to file and lose. This thing's also become called a black hole. So will it get revamped because of all of these claims coming in compared to what it's used to with H1N1 vaccine? I'm not sure, but it looks like it needs a lot of work. And this is where
and I think the reason you put these two together and why they go side by side is exactly this, folks. Imagine you're going to try to sue to say that my mother was perfectly healthy. She got the second vaccine for COVID-19 and she died within 8 hours. We have seen these stories. 78-year-old woman. There's a woman that just died, I believe, in the waiting room this week while they were watching her. And what does the headline say? Doctors say it's not related to the vaccine. That's what you're up against. Try going into a courtroom where the religious belief in this brand new technology is that it wasn't caused by the vaccine. How are you going to win? And by the way, nobody's collecting data, as Jeffrey pointed out. You've just inserted yourself through an emergency use authorization program into a vaccine trial, whether you know it or not, but that trial has no ability to collect the data. Sorry. Yeah, we said we were watching you. We said we're looking out, but nobody's got any data. I don't have it. Here, all we got is a bunch of blank paper. There's our data. This is what we're collecting right now as people are dropping like flies. And good luck in court, because every doctor we're going to bring to the courtroom says, we didn't see any connection between the vaccine. We didn't do an autopsy. We didn't collect any data. We didn't, our trials didn't look for death. Nobody knows, but we're just going to go on assumptions. And the assumption is you're going to lose this case. All 100 million of you, if you all end up getting sick or injured or killed by this vaccine.
Right. Well said, Del. Well said. I can't say any better. And this is what we're up against. So please share this information with your family. Share these articles. Share these clips with your family, because this is the information that everyone's going to need to be on the same page if something does happen, or just moving forward with this. But following up and just ending this segment.
Well, hold on one second, because I want to make this point. You know, there is an easy fix, Jeffrey. We could fix this overnight. I could fix this. You want to know? Here's Del Bigtree's fix. You want to fix the surveillance problem, and you want to make sure that the vaccine is safe? Put liability back on the manufacturers. Let's do it. Everybody call your senators and your congressmen and say, this is ridiculous. I just read in the New York Times that they're not calculating the data, that they have no way to capture this. So I no longer feel safe with the product, and I don't know why our government is protecting the manufacturers from liability for a product when the manufacturers are the ones that did the supposed safety studies. The manufacturers are the ones that are telling it's safe, and yet nobody's showing us any data because they're not collecting it. I don't think they should be liability protected. You want to fix this problem overnight, you tell the manufacturers, guess what? Every death, every injury, everything is going to a courtroom, and you're going to have to fight for your life in there. You know what would happen? They would pull that vaccine back immediately and say, you know what? This thing's not ready yet. It's not ready yet. We don't know if it causes long-term injury or death, and therefore, we can't put 100 million people at risk. Certainly, we would never be able to afford that. That would bankrupt us. So we're going to wait until we can prove it's safe. That's what would happen. That's how we fix this problem, folks. Just go to your congressman, go to your senators and say, you want to get the vaccine uptake to go up, then put liability back on the industry right away. There's no way we can be asked to take a product that has zero liability and pushes us into a court system where the government doesn't care at all and never pays anyone out. I probably should bring it down right now. I don't have my executive producer here today. She's at home. And so I'm sorry. She'd be saying, Del, calm down. I guess it's because I'm cold and, you know, it's been a heck of a week, but I'm frustrated. These things just seem so obvious, don't they? Aren't they obvious? I hope everyone in our audience is saying, yeah, Del, I feel the same way. Calm down a little bit. We don't need to be yelled at. We're with you. But it's getting serious. And I guess it's my concern. People are going to die. People are going to be, it's happening all around us. Man, it's time for someone to care.
And we don't have to rely on our discernment or common sense or what we're seeing with our own eyes as this is happening. There's a historical precedent for this with the H1N1 swine flu rollout. That was GSK's Pandemrix. They were protected, and they weren't as forthright as they should have been with the post-marketing surveillance. They were hiding it. They were downplaying the issues of the reactions with one of their vaccines. It was having like tenfold more reactions than the other vaccine that was out there, and they still didn't pull it from the market. So in the lawsuits in the UK, the lawsuits reflected that. A lot of narcolepsy was developed from that. But regardless, we have a rare gotcha moment. And typically these gotcha moments come either with someone on the stand or with a hidden camera or someone, an insider, blowing a whistle. This is with regards to Mark Zuckerberg. And now Facebook, before we go into this story, it's important to throw a little groundwork down. Facebook, just a couple of weeks ago, we reported on this. They decided to kind of up the ante for their censorship of vaccine, what they call misinformation. So they say Facebook widens ban on vaccine misinformation. The initial hard ban came in right as these experimental vaccines were being rolled out. Now they put another kind of increased version of this on. But what just happened was something very interesting. Project Veritas, this is James O'Keefe's organization. They caught Mark Zuckerberg undercover with an undercover camera. They have apparently an insider within Facebook that is feeding them this information. And this is the tweet that he put out, Project Veritas put out, breaking, Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg takes anti-vax stance in violation of his own platform's new policy. He says, I share some concerns of this vaccine because we just don't know the long-term side effects of basically modifying people's DNA and RNA. Let's take a listen of what that actually sounded like.
I do just want to make sure that I share some caution on this because we just don't know the long-term side effects of basically modifying people's DNA and RNA to directly encode in a person's DNA and RNA, basically the ability to produce those antibodies, and whether that causes other mutations or other risks downstream.
Now, as you know, questioning a vaccine and saying that it's going to change your DNA was supposedly a conspiracy theory. And Dr. Fauci himself said that if you question that, that is a conspiracy. And he said the vaccines don't change your DNA. So the media ran with that and said that that's not something that happened. So for Mark Zuckerberg to be allowed to question that, to be allowed to debate that, even question the fact that there's no long-term safety studies like he did, to be concerned, that must be nice. But I guess the 3 billion users on his platform, or however many he has at this point, aren't allowed that same grace in his mind.
You know, and I know that was an older statement. My understanding is it's back earlier last year that he was caught saying that. But it shows the level of hypocrisy. I think Mark Zuckerberg clearly is an intelligent human being. He's built, made himself a billionaire, I think faster than almost anybody else. Maybe Elon Musk is challenging them. I'm not sure where their ages are at. But the point being that he's being sensible there, right? He's just being sensible. Anybody, and I got asked in an interview just yesterday, why do you think nurses and doctors for the first time are really, 50%, 70% of nursing home doctors aren't receiving the vaccine? I said, because anybody looking at how fast these trials went would say that wasn't long enough to determine long-term safety problems with a brand new experimental technology. I feel bad for all of the people lining themselves up right now for this product that are listening to CNN and Rachel Maddow and Sanjay Gupta and Anderson Cooper and Bill Gates. I'm sorry that you are being lied to, but the truth is that anybody with a working brain that has ever spent any time looking at science of drugs and vaccines has to know you may be able to warp speed the development of a product, but you can't warp speed safety. You can't spend, what's about 90 days now, I guess, looking at a product and determine what it's going to do 4 or 5 years down the road to you. And this vaccine does have all those potentials. I'm not going to say it mutates your DNA. I'm not going to say it mutates your RNA. The truth is, even the scientists that make it don't know that because they've never put it in a damn human being in their lives. They don't know what it's doing to you. We don't know what the shaking and the paralysis and the palsy, and we don't know what is happening to your body. This vaccine doesn't have aluminum in it, doesn't have mercury. You're not reacting to some neurotoxic metal. We don't know what your body's reacting to. What we know is it killed animals in animal trials when you came in contact with the virus. We know it's causing anaphylaxis, shock reactions in countless people, enough that you have to change the protocol. And so under those circumstances, Mark Zuckerberg, when you say, look, I don't feel safe with it because there's no way to know the long-term effects of this brand new technology. No, duh. No, duh. And I highly doubt, although I'm sure he's backtracked this statement because he's got to censor the world and he's invested in pharma and they're invested in him, but I doubt you can change his brain. You'd have to be crazy to take this vaccine unless you're the same type of person who would hop on a rocket right now built by Elon Musk and go to Mars for the first time. If you know that you're taking on a dangerous mission that you may not survive, then I honor you as a warrior, a soldier, a pioneer for taking that risk. But for everybody else that's just lining up that thinks this thing is actually going to stop their infection or transmission or that it's safe and you're protecting yourself, I mean, it reminds me of a story, actually, Jeffrey. My neighbor decided to start breeding quail. And he told me the other day, he's like, I made a big mistake. Breeding quail and breeding Labrador retrievers at the same time is not the best mix. He heard all this noise outside. It was getting crazy. And he opened up, he's working from home, and he opens up his door and he goes out and he just sees feathers flying everywhere. And he goes running over, and his Labrador had dug the corner of the fencing for the quail out, and they were popping through the hole. And every time one would pop through the hole, the retriever would grab it by the head, shake it, kill it, and toss it off. And he says, as I got there, every one of my quail were lined up, waiting for their turn to get through the hole, as right on the other side, the dog's just ripping their heads off. That's what I feel like when I read these headlines of these poor people that are lining up like, what's taking so long? I can't wait to get mine, bobbling back there with all the other quail, waiting to get on the other side of what looks like it could be a very, very dangerous product. Certainly, there is no known end or no understanding of the long-term consequences. So Mark Zuckerberg, hypocrite of the week. I think that that's what this is really about. The fact that you are censoring smart people like Jeffrey, like me, like our team, scientists, doctors. You know, the ivermectin video has been pulled down, the doctor that stood before Congress. We've seen censoring of Vladimir Zelenko that knows a hell of a lot more about health and this issue than anyone at Facebook. And Richard Bartlett and Simone Gold and the frontline doctors. While you're censoring doctors, Mark, who actually know what they're asking about, and us that have read the trials, meanwhile, behind the scenes, you're allowed to be intelligent about it. This is a crisis. It's a crisis of consciousness. It's like the ministry of truth. That's you, Mark, and you're a liar now, and we all know it.
And we're receiving, you know, because this is experimental, we're receiving comments from officials and health experts saying experts believe, experts think that there might be some benefit, or it might be safe. We get these religious kind of undertones of this thing, but historically, and this could be argued, but historically, when drugs or products are rolled out on the population, there's how they performed in the controlled lab, then there's how they perform in the real world, like your rocket ship analogy. You can measure and tune the rocket ship, but once that sucker takes off, it's really important to know how to fly it and how it works when it's in the air. So we're in the air now, and this is why it's so important to have these open debates, to not have censorship on these conversations, on the information that's being shared, because this stuff is vital. And to fix those programs, like you said, to fix those surveillance programs and the compensation programs, because that is the lifeline at this point for these people. It's information, and then it's the government programs that they're going to be running to if they get injured.
Absolutely. Well, Jeffrey, that was great reporting. Obviously, these are really shocking developments, but it all proves that, you know, what we've been talking about. This is what we've been warning people about, and even mainstream media can't avoid it. Certainly, you keep doing a brilliant job of holding their feet to the fire. So keep up the great work, Jeffrey, and thank you for joining on this sort of stripped down version of the Highwire. Appreciate it.
Thanks. I look forward to next week when the sun's out.
All right, me too. Take care. And anybody that wants to get deeper in any of these conversations, definitely check out the Jackson Report, which you can find at thehighwire.com. Jeffrey, writes and gets deeper into a lot of the topics that we cover on the show. Folks, we are fighting legal battles all over this country right now. We keep winning against employers that are trying to force the vaccine on employees. Just read about a waitress, I guess, in New York that may have just lost her job. These are incredible times. We need your help. As you can see, we use regular cameras. These are really DSLR cameras. Those are regular televisions behind us. We managed to make a television set as affordable as possible because a lot of great prosumer gear, but we do this, and I think we give you this image that we can afford the multi-millions of dollars we're spending fighting people's cases all over the country, which ultimately is fighting for you. We're fighting for the president. We're fighting to make a difference. We're fighting to stop the forced use of this vaccine and others upon you. And believe me, I've been saying for years, the adult forced mandate is right around the corner. What about the passport? Who's going to stop it? Well, we have the best legal team. We're also the ones reporting on this and providing you with all the science. We can't do it without you. So please, if you're out there and you keep watching the Highwire and you appreciate the information that's out there or hearing about the lawsuits that we're winning where no one else is, then take this opportunity to become a recurring donor. Netflix isn't saving your life. Netflix isn't fighting for you, but we are. So why don't you go ahead and we're asking you to become a recurring donor. This helps us understand where we can go, how many cases we can file next week. Go for $21 for 2021, $21 a month. Not only allows you to get all the information, the newsletter and this show, but also you can know that when we win these lawsuits, you made that possible. Well, folks, as I've said, this is stripped down. We're really tight. We don't have the internet capabilities to Skype in guests and do a lot of the stories we want to talk about this week. So we're going to push that all to next week where we'll be back in our usual fit form with heat and water. I got to get back to my house because I really do have a catastrophe on my hands, and I still have a family that needs to get a shower. It's been days. So I just want to leave you with this thought. You know, you're tuning into the Highwire because I think that we think like you do, and you think like we do. In fact, we all kind of think like Mark Zuckerberg does. We're all intelligent enough to understand what a proper safety study is. We're intelligent enough to know that the pharmaceutical industry has lied to us way too many times to ever be trusted again. We've watched Tony Fauci flip-flop like a salmon on a beach with a grizzly bear slapping it around. And at a certain point, intelligent people don't just turn their lives over to people they don't trust. The CDC, the FDA, the WHO have been caught in lies and misrepresentations the entire time. Whether that misrepresentation was simply the fact that, don't worry, when we give you an emergency use authorization, we're going to have robust surveillance and we're going to have a great court system in place to pay those that perhaps get injured. And none of that now could be further from the truth. We talk about the truth here. I'm not trying to tell you what to think, and you know that. I know you're tuning in because you just want more information as we are. You are getting to watch, you know, those of us that have the same questions that you do, only we've got an international team of scientists that you've made it possible. You've helped us fund the ability to talk to world-renowned scientists and legal experts and politicians around the world to get the answers you care about. That's what the Highwire is about, and we're really looking forward to continuing our journey. Nothing is going to stop us. We never stood down. Whether Facebook was threatening or YouTube or Instagram, we never cared. You know that. You now know that. And you know that you can trust us, that we won't back down. We don't answer to anybody but you. You are our sponsors. You want the truth, and so do we. So please, do me a favor and start helping your friends find the Highwire. Get them to be a part of this process. You know who they are. They're out there alone. It's scary out there with all of this misinformation. What's really going on? Is Bill Gates running the world, or is Joe Biden? What is happening? More and more answers to these questions are coming on the Highwire. But we want to, build a movement, an international movement, whether you're in Australia or Germany or Poland or France or Canada, Brazil, Mexico, wherever you are. The truth is just as important to you as it is to us. And know that no matter what, come rain, come shine, come ice, come sleet, we will find a way to get that information to you. I believe on the other side of this storm that we're all living with and living in and living through, there is a brighter day, a bright sun, not blocked by some lunatic in a science lab, but beaming down on us as God meant it to be. We're all working towards that end together. Thank you for all of your help. Thank you for being here. And for all of you out there in Texas and around the world, stay warm, stay dry, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for watching, and thanks to the Highwire insiders who make this show possible. If you'd like to become a Highwire insider, then go to our website, thehighwire.com, and sign up now. And please, share the show. We're on Instagram, Twitter, BitChute, and now on Roku. Because knowledge is power, censorship is real, and we need all the help we can get.